the weapon that didn't need a blade, a flash of white fire sweeping across a medieval battlefield, a formation of soldiers raising their arms to shield their eyes, and a group of elite knights advancing behind a wall of searing reflected sunlight. This is not fantasy. It is a forgotten military tactic that turned mirrors into weapons, sunlight into ammunition, and timing into lethal precision. Long before gunpowder dominated Europe, a select class of warriors learned to harness optical warfare, concentrating the sun's glare through polished bronze, silvered glass, and reflective shields. Tonight, we uncover how this hidden science of medieval light manipulation reshaped battles, disoriented enemies, and exposed a secret that history chose to dim. The birth of optical warfare. Across the ancient Mediterranean and into the medieval world, warriors already understood a simple truth: light can blind faster than steel can strike. They polished bronze until it shone like a pale gold moon. They silvered shield faces to mirror daylight with brutal accuracy. And most importantly, they recognized that sunlight at the right angle could become a weapon more terrifying than any sword. This was not merely craftsmanship. It was an early form of battlefield optics, where geometry, astronomy, and engineering converged to influence combat. The art of the mirror shield. To weaponize sunlight, knights required a tool unlike ordinary armor. The mirror shield was shaped not only to deflect arrows and blades, but to collect and scatter high-intensity glare. Some were polished to a near-reflective finish on one side. Others incorporated thin layers of silvered foil or glass-like coatings. A few even bore small convex curves, bending light outward into a wider arc. These shields were not intended to ignite fires or melt armor, but to disrupt vision, distort depth perception, and fracture formations. A moment of blindness in combat was enough to break discipline and trigger panic. The specialized units who mastered the light. Not all knights were trained to use mirror shields. The tactic required precision, coordination, and an understanding of battlefield timing. Certain cavalry groups adopted them for shock charges. Light infantry used them to cover retreats or ambushes. And elite guard units carried polished shields specifically for high noon confrontations. These soldiers practiced angling techniques, turning glare into a controlled burst directed at enemy lines. With sufficient training, they could blind archers, interrupt cavalry momentum, and expose commanders long enough for an assault to strike. The science behind the blinding glare. The tactic succeeded because of physics so simple yet powerful that medieval engineers intuitively understood it. A mirrored surface reflects a concentrated band of light. When multiple shields align, the intensity multiplies dramatically. Sunlight striking at 45 degrees can stretch across a battlefield like a white spear. At close range, the glare overwhelms the retina. At medium range, it obscures depth and motion. And at long range, it creates phantom silhouettes that soldiers mistake for advancing troops. Even a few seconds of compromised vision can unravel formation integrity, a critical weakness exploited ruthlessly by mirror shield units. Battlefield executions of the tactic. Medieval warfare was shaped by moments of psychological collapse, and light was the perfect catalyst. Mirror shield teams often took position on higher ground. At specific pre-planned intervals, they angled their shields simultaneously. The enemy, expecting steel, instead received a wall of blinding radiance. Archer lines faltered. Cavalry slowed, unable to judge terrain. Foot soldiers broke rank, raising arms to shield their eyes. And behind the glare, the knights advanced. Optical deception and commander targeting. The glare did more than blind. It created illusions. Reflected sunlight produces shifting halos that distort distance. Moving shields create the impression of a larger force. Commanders, unable to distinguish unit sizes, hesitated in issuing orders. Some written accounts describe dancing lights on hillsides. Others speak of white banners of flame crossing the battlefield. These descriptions, often dismissed as exaggerations, aligned seamlessly with the physics of coordinated mirror attacks. Against such optical deception, discipline often shattered. The tactic's weakness and its decline. But mirror warfare had limitations that ultimately doomed it. Cloud cover instantly neutralized the tactic. Low-angle winter sunlight was ineffective. And as full-plate armor became widespread, the need for mirrored shields waned. Gunpowder artillery introduced smoke, dust, and chaos that obscured line-of-sight warfare. Battles no longer depended on sunlight angles, but on explosive force. And the mirror shield, once a cutting-edge optical weapon, faded into obscurity. The historical footprint left behind. Though the tactic disappeared, traces of it remain. Polished shield faces in museum collections, manuscripts describing sun mirrors, and battlefield reports mentioning blinding glare as a prelude to cavalry charges. These fragments suggest a broader, coordinated practice rather than isolated experiments. A forgotten chapter where medieval soldiers wielded physics as deftly as steel. The legacy of battlefield that shined. In the end, mirror shields were more than tools of war. They were symbols of ingenuity, a reminder that medieval combat was not only brutal, but deeply inventive. Knights learned to harness a force older than fire itself. They weaponized daylight. They turned the sun into an ally. And though history often hides their brilliance behind tales of chivalry and armor, they remain proof that science has always shaped the battlefield. Their legacy gleams quietly across centuries, whispering of a time when a flash of light could decide the fate of an entire army.